There is a new build going around that is catching a lot of popularity in top guilds in the game right now, and I think it is pretty nutty, so let's talk about it. I am gonna show you the talents, but please do not skip after them this time. It is really important that you understand why they are laid out this way. I call it Fury Prot in the start of this video, but in reality this is mostly arms and no prot at all. And no, you are still gonna be using a shield, and you are still gonna be in defensive stance. Dual wield tanking is not a real thing until way later. Our goal is maximizing threat, rage generation, and thus damage. Since we are not going deep prot, we are sacrificing a 15% threat bonus right here that we are not gonna get, so we gotta offset that with pure damage. So in theory we need to get at least 15% damage to be in line with what a prot warrior would do, perhaps even a little more. But the good thing is that this is basically the only real threat that you gain from prot talents, because all the talents below Defiance are just random tankiness bonuses, maybe a little bit of rage here, and pretty much nothing, just revenge, which is, you don't take this, is a PvP talent actually. So you're losing improved shield block, this is a big deal. You're losing defense, that is a big deal. So you are losing some tankiness, quite a bit of tankiness, but threat, you're basically losing just the 15% modifier. And one of the ways that we are gonna offset it is we're gonna take cruelty right here, 5% crit. As you know, 5% crit, 5% chance that your hit is gonna do double damage, aka 5% more damage. That is 5 out of the 15 we're losing here already off the bat. And now we're gonna have to work on the arms tree here, because all the talents below this are worthless. We are gonna take Heroic Strike here, very important that we take Heroic Strike, because this is gonna be a huge part of our strategy of making threat here. We are gonna be generating so much rage, we're gonna be dumping it on Heroic Strike, one of your best abilities for threat. And we are also gonna take Improved Rend, because we're gonna need this talent below here, and also we're gonna need a Bleed, you're gonna see that in a minute once again. And now we got two chances here to do something. We want to take parry if we want to reduce damage taken, or we can take a thunderclap for more threat. We're gonna go for thunderclap, you know, reducing the rage, cost 5-4. And we take 1 point in parry here. This is max threat, you can go for more parry if you want. Parry is also really nice because it helps you a little bit. Every time you get hit, you get a free auto attack again basically. So that's parry haste, so that is also more threat. And we are going to take 1 point in deep wounds. As you can see right here, we are level 25 now. Why are we going deep wounds? Okay, we're going deep wounds and rend because of this little talent over here. Blood Frenzy. Every time you deal bleed damage, you gain 3 rage. This is every 3 seconds your deep wounds and your rend ticks. So you're getting 3 plus 3, 6 rage every 3 seconds, 2 rage a second for free. That's the most important part. And we are gonna need that rage because we're gonna be taking Devastate. Devastate is Thunder Armor, but it does damage. How much damage does it do now? 60% weapon damage plus 6% per stack of Thunder. That is essentially 90% weapon damage every time you pop it when you got the full stacks. So as you can see, you're gonna ramp up your threat really nicely. This is a lot of damage. Also, the really good thing about Devastate with damage, now your Thunder Armor can crit. So your Thunder Armor can give you deep wounds. Your Thunder Armor is gonna be doing a lot more threat and is affected by this talent too. So it's really good in general to get Devastate. People are sleeping on the overall effect Devastate had on this. And finally, we are gonna be taking the Furious Thunder enchant here for the legs. This is just more threat on Thunderclap, basically. You need to keep Thunderclap up at all times anyway. You might as well get it. I wanna drop a little caveat here. If you are fighting a boss that is immune to bleeding, we're talking about Baron Aquanis in BFD for example, we are gonna get rid of Blood Frenzy because we cannot use it, and we're just gonna take Flagellation instead. Now if you look at the numbers that you are gonna be producing with this extra rage and damage, we are looking at about the same threat as a prot warrior. We are not quite killing it yet on the threat meters. So why are the top guilds doing this? Okay, as far as I know, the first people doing this were salad bakers, and I am not sure if that's the only person that did it. I am sure somebody else theory crafted this before them. You know, all the speed clearing guilds do similar stuff. But back during the Scorpion meta, you know, when people were having a Scorpion tank half the freaking raid because they were that broken, they needed a tank to do some of the fights. They needed a real tank to do the tank swapping fights. So they didn't want to sacrifice a DPSer when a Scorpion was tanking all the time. Why would you get a full tank? And this is where this build really shines. It has the flexibility. If you go back and look at the talents right here, if you change this rune here, right here to Quick Strike, and you change this rune here to Frenzied Assault, now you can even take Flagellation here if you want. Now you got a very solid 200 DPSer build right there. This is all damage talents, right? And that's the point. You can be a full-on DPS and still be able to serve as a tank when your raid needs you. There was only 3 fights where a real tank was needed at the time because of the tank swapping. So we're talking Kelris, Gamura, and Akumai. And in those cases, the DPS warrior with this spec would just take the tanking runes and pick up the boss and do the mechanic, and then he would just go back to normally DPSing. Now, after the Scorpion meta, I still think there is a role for this as an off tank, not a main tank, okay? No sane person would want somebody with no defensive talents to be a main tank. But for all the fights where you need to tank swap and you're gonna need an off tank for that, this is probably the best you can get. Also, another thing is that this build is excellent at pulling threat when they are not taking the damage, okay? You see something like a prot paladin failing or a prot warrior even failing in the tanking department when they gotta be the second on the threat meters because they do not produce the rage or threat necessary to be second on threat meters when they are not getting hit. This build completely circumvents that. You can even swap to a 200 weapon, and when you get the aggro you just swap to a shield with a macro. You can swap weapons in combat, so this is outrageously good. Your stat priority for max threat is gonna be agility, threat, and stamina. We are optimizing for rage generation once again. Now, if you wanna max out damage, and it may be interesting for you to get 2 different sets you swap into when you are not being the tank, you wanna stack strength over agility. Strength is still better, but as I said with the bear, in these low levels most of your threat is from base values, the base threat of your Devastate, the base threat from Heroic Strike, and that means the more rage you get, the more threat you're gonna do. Besides, critting gives us deep wounds, right? And that means more rage that we can still dump on this. Now we're gonna talk about your rotation. It is a priority list. Basically, you first wanna keep demoralizing shout and thunderclap at all times on the target. And if nobody can keep battle shout on you, you also gotta do that. Of course, you can do that before the pool. Remember to also blood rage as soon as you can, because rage generation is also threat. Then comes revenge, which is only proccing when you get a block or a dodge. That does a lot of threat. Then comes devastate, which is gonna be our bread and butter. And once we get 3 stacks of sunder, we can rend the target and get the extra rage in the form of bleeding to us back. Is also really nice because, you know, that's also damage. And if we are getting rage capped, like if we are over 40 rage and only just then, you want a Heroic Strike too. With this build, if you get a decent amount of agility, you are gonna be spamming Devastate every GCD basically. So you're doing 90% weapon damage. You can imagine how much damage that's gonna be. Once again, I wanna take a minute to discourage you a little. You are squishy as hell. Your only lifeline is shield block that only blocks 1 attack. And you can't do this if you do not have a raid that both kills the bosses fast, because no healer can keep you alive for very long, and second, that you got very competent, very attentive healers. And on top of that, this only works if you have good gear with the right stats, all your consumables, and all your world buffs. However, if you wanna tank and DPS at the same time, this is by far the best build to do that. I wanna once again shout out Lati from Salad Bakers for demonstrating on stream how he uses this build for speedrunning. His channel is gonna be on the description. I didn't wanna use his footage because I thought you might as well just watch his speedrunning, that's what it's there for. Subscribe, leave a like, join the Discord, and thank you for watching!